So welcome back, everybody, to Visual Capitalist webinar, Numbers to Narratives. This is part two. So if you haven't seen part one and you're interested in the why this matters, feel free to go back and check that out. But for this, we're going to be talking about how to do all of this, and really the how of modern data storytelling. So first off, a little bit about who we are. We are the global leaders in data, visual storytelling. Jeff Desjardins is our founder and chief. I'm Lindsay Christianson, and I head up partnerships. And Jeff, maybe you can just give a little context about what birthed Visual Capitalists before we introduce our co-hosts.
Well, it was actually working with publicly traded companies, which is what I was doing from a marketing standpoint. And they all had, I mean, this is obviously 13, 14 years ago. So, it's not sort of the modern landscape. But even at that time, it felt like their stories were getting lost into the ether. And it was really hard to communicate data around the trends that were powering their company, data around the company themselves to try and tell their story to investors. And so where we started was working with these basically small cap public companies that were trying to figure this out. And over time, the mid cap companies caught on, and then the large cap companies caught on, and we sort of started working with everybody, obviously. But yeah, we started really small and focused on some of these trends that the small cap companies were focused on.
Beautiful. Well, let's introduce our co-host here, Miss April Rudin. Very happy to have you joining us here, April. April is the CEO of the Rudin Group, again, Forbes contributor and marketing strategist to the ultra high net worth offices, and does a lot of board membership and advisory. So, April, I'll give you the floor to introduce yourself and please provide additional context.
Sure. So I started my firm 17 years ago, and one particular person I talked to told me that social media was a fad and that high net worth people would never be on the internet. And also, he told me I was too old to be an entrepreneur. But how that fits into the data story is I was always looking for something interesting to use on social media that would capture someone's attention. And today you can see how personal brands and personal stories have made their way. When I first started 17 years ago, Facebook was decidedly for personal information and LinkedIn was decidedly for professional information. And now the two have met, and personalizing information has never been more important. We made the decision for our Wiley book, which is on pre-order now and will be on Amazon, which will be published in October, that we needed to have something that was different. And there was no question in our minds that we wanted to use Visual Capitalist as a way of visualizing some of the data points and the ideas that we put forth in our book. So really happy to be here and partnering up with Visual Capitalist. I'm a big fan.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for the vote of confidence. We're happy to be partnered up as well and have you joining us today as a co-host. So why don't we jump right in and I'll hand the reins over to you, Jeff.
Yeah, we'll jump in. I have one side comment for April as well, which you mentioned about the age of starting being a startup founder. And there's actually data on this. The most successful age for founders is a lot, probably because we all see the like Mark Zuckerbergs and stuff on the news and whatever, right? But actually, the most successful age for a startup founder for like building a high net worth company is about 45, and in mid to late 40s is the data. So obviously, all around that, but yeah, we have data on this to probably no one's surprise, but it is really interesting though, because I think there's a big misconception about startups in general. Anyways,
I think that is also important information for
yeah.
the topic that we're going to talk about today, because many financial advisors are looking for younger clients and there are, probably twice as many entrepreneurs today. So knowing that you have younger clients over longer periods of time, but having a good balance in terms of what your client set looks like. So younger, more mature clients, and then baby boomers is probably the right mix to have.
Absolutely. Cool. Well, I'm going to talk, like, we're talking about the how in this episode, which is how do you use data storytelling to make an impact? What are some of the things you can do? What are some of the tricks that we've learned? And we'll get into all that. I do quickly want to talk a quick summary of the why we're doing this. And the why is decision makers are bombarded with too much information. And the way that we solve for this is we want to, like, through Visual Capitalist, our goal by dissecting data, by telling data stories, by trying to find the insights that matter. Our goal is to get you the right data and insights at the right time, so that instead of being bombarded with so much information, you get what matters, and that it stands out to you, so that you can learn it right away and be sort of ahead of the game, basically. But I think that this also applies to the financial marketing context as well, which is in order to stand out in that universe, you also need to be getting data to your target audience at the right time, and to not be talking about stuff that's seemingly not relevant, or it's too far out, or it's not pertinent enough. And so I think that this is an overlying theme to everything that we're talking about here.
On this slide, Jeff, I think it might be helpful for the audience, since there's so many examples here, beautiful examples, to just talk for a minute about the level set, the definitions between data visualization
Sure.
and infographics.
Yeah, so the terms are, so I use data storytelling as a catch-all term for charts, for infographics, for data visualizations, for maps, and that's the broadest catch-all term that we use to kind of combine anything. However, if you go to any of these individual topics, they all have their definitions too. And so data visualization, I think probably the best example of that would be, I think all of these pieces below sort of fall into that category here, because an infographic typically integrates much more of a narrative and a story involved, and it also is able to incorporate more text and storytelling, like written storytelling, and also some more qualitative information. And all of these pieces below, I would say, all fall more on the data visualization or sort of chart map perspective. The other thing that's more common with infographics is that they typically combine multiple forms of these things together, right? So rather than, for example, the chart on the bottom left here is just, it's if you see the whole thing, it's just a donut chart. The graphs here are just graphs with labels. But if you were to combine a couple things together, let's say you have, let's say you're taking a map and you're making it 3D, and then you're visualizing data on top of that, and then you're adding a level of commentary on top of that to say, Sydney, Australia, blah, 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 and New York is the biggest. If you're starting to do that, you're getting more into infographic territory. Now, it's not like, people aren't going to like argue about it too much. You can use any of these terms semi-interchangeably, but if you're getting technical, that's how I would describe it.
Thank you.
Okay, so how does Visual Capitalist do this, and how do we help brands? We'll just talk about this a little bit before we get into the actual some examples at work, which I think are going to be very visual and hopefully inspire you to think more about this. And also we'll talk about some case study as well. But basically what we do anytime that we're creating a data story, this is kind of the process that we go through. First, we have to find the right data, and we have our own analytics on this. So we've published 5,000 different data stories before, and we have analytics on all the different topics that we've covered, whether it's something that we did ourselves or something that we did with a client. We know exactly how it performed, how many people looked at it. We know which topics are more popular. We know which ones are less popular. And we use that information to help select the data that is going to make the most sense, and the framing that's going to make the most sense in a particular case. Then, of course, we apply data storytelling to it. So this is our secret sauce. This is what we're best known for. But what is less known is that we have our own best practices in place to make sure that A, it's effective, B, it can be done, relatively fast, C, it can be done in a way that aligns with, the data that we have on the left. We want to make sure that something resonates with people and that it's effective. And so these different tricks that we've learned over time and the best practices help us do this in a way that ensures that it's going to be effective. And then the last thing is simply that we show rather than tell, right? And we focus on showing you the data rather than giving you an opinion about it. And for that reason, Visual Capitalist is rated 100 out of 100 score with NewsGuard, which evaluates the trust of different media companies online. I won't name names, but there are certain companies that people watch on TV all the time and watch and consume their media online as well that are not rated 100. They're rated 60, 70 out of 100 because of various issues that they have. They focus on opinion more than trust. And then the last thing is that it's worth mentioning that it's not just about when we do all of this stuff and when we create these data stories, it's not just about setting it directly to one person. It's also about the fact that most people, that at least in our audience that we've surveyed, they actually share it with friends, family, coworkers. 76.4% of our readers say that they've shared our visuals with someone in some case, whether that's sending a WhatsApp message to someone or whether it's sharing it on Facebook or LinkedIn. These are things that tend to spread, and overall through this whole process that we go through, it makes the world's data more discoverable, or it makes client data more discoverable.
Well, some firms may not want their client data to be discoverable. So when you were talking about page views and also things like that, I wanted to just mention that some use cases for this would be where you're looking to elevate your brand or your products or things like that. So page views are really important and the sharing is really important. And then there's a whole host of other applications that I think people can use, which would be internally client reporting, things like that, where it's using data visualization, infographics to simplify and storytell within something that is personal or private to a person too. So I think that dividing line can also be done.
Yeah, sorry, when I'm talking about client data, I mean our clients, the people that we're working with. We want their story to be discoverable, and that's why we work with a bunch of different clients to get their whatever they want to share and their story to the rest of the world. One thing that's worth touching on is that this has changed over time. This has all changed, and when we started, this was when most people were on desktop, fewer people were on mobile, fewer people were on social media, and they would instead, go to a website and see this, or they would get an email that links them to something. And so the way that media used to be consumed is we used to do these. They don't even fit on the screen. Giant, really long pieces that would tell you, for example, the story of Warren Buffett's life, or on the right we have something that I think we did with BlackRock that tells the story about rapid urbanization and the mega trends that were occurring in urbanization and population, and tying it into an ETF. And this is just the way that people don't consume data in this way anymore. They don't consume infographics, which these are more infographic examples, April. These are long and story driven and have multiple different types of charts. And this is a little bit, this is kind of dating ourselves now, because this is, 10, 12 years ago when these were the most popular. And nowadays things have changed to much faster cycle times. We would often have people on our team work an entire week to build these long infographics. And now we build one of these in a day for each person on the team. So we aim to build, 4 or 5 of these a day through our editorial team. And this just speaks to how different media and how different marketing is nowadays. Maybe that's something that you can comment on from from your expertise, April.
Sure. I mean, people are bombarded by so much information. You want your data to stand out and you want it to tell a story, as we've been talking about. And I think each one of these, just from my own standpoint, even if it's something that doesn't even affect me on a daily basis, is something I might want to know about. So, when you take that and you overlay financial services, you can think about many different ways of using these kinds of infographics. I wanted to also mention, besides LinkedIn and social media, infographics and data viz are really great for Instagram as well, where you're going to have a more visual type of content that you want to use. So you can have multiple also images that you use to tell a story. So each one of these lined up could tell a story. Each one of these could be used to create, let's say, an ebook that could tell a story. I could see using this for an annual report. There's so many different things that I can think of for creative and modern marketers to think about in terms of how this information is used. One last thing that I'd like to add is that some of the information that Visual Capitalist puts out is total market data. And so I can see for some brands, you might want to take the total market data and then overlay or also add in your own company's data. So by comparison, you can see things. So for example, the one on the distribution of global wealth that's on the bottom right, maybe you use that to support where your firm is opening up
Mm,
offices. So
yeah, that's really cool.
yeah.
Very cool.
So how
Yeah,
do you take the information to build a story?
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so I think we're gonna talk a little bit about here. We're talking about right sizing, and this is kind of the theme that we just covered on the last two slides. I would say in the last couple of slides, we were more talking about right sizing of like our content in general, but I think business content is specifically worth talking about, which is that we've worked with I'll say large management consulting companies. You can imagine which companies those are that have sent us decks that are like 500 slides long, and they're like, we expect someone to read this. But that's just not how the world works anymore. People don't go and look at a 500 slide deck to go and try and understand something. And so the way that we worked with them is we chopped up this 500 slide deck, and we took the 10 most important insights we thought, and we built those into visuals like this that we were just showing for them, so that they can show the most important insights from this whole set of information and get them across really fast, rather than, again, here's this 500 slide deck. And like the world just operates on an executive summary level, like a need to know basis. Like, tell me what I need to know and tell it to be fast, right? And so from this perspective of attention and trust, which we covered in the last episode, white papers, reports, all this deep thought leadership, all this stuff that we've all done in the business world and in the financial world for a really long time, its usefulness is kind of changing and evolving because of the attention and trust standpoint that we talked about in the last episode, which is that the trust is there. People are often are still trusting financial institutions, or even though it's at lows, but it's still generally, people are trusting these institutions. And then on the attention side, this is something that's new that marketers have to start to battle for. You have to actually get your stuff in front of people in order for them to consume it. So are they going to consume this big white paper or this big report or whatnot? And what we've done is we've developed an approach where, with data storytelling, we break up these big indexes or big reports or whatnot, and we turn it into smaller, more digestible content that is used to capture people's attention, stimulate thought, get them thinking, maybe clicking through, seeing some other pieces, and eventually then they might want to go back and read the original report or the white paper or whatnot. But I think this is just kind of a way to think about, are the things that we did 5, 10, 15 years ago in the business or in the financial community, do those things make sense in 2025, given that distribution is a lot through algorithms, through social media, through people are looking at it on their phone. I think it's just a different world, and that's why we approach it in this different way.
So for financial services marketers, they might struggle being in the middle between portfolio managers, chief investment officers, and people that are used to writing and giving their opinion for things. And they may not be accustomed to thinking about things in visuals. And the middle person is the marketer. So it might be interesting to A/B test these things against each other.
Mm-hmm.
So, or offer, some people might be more visual, other people might want to read. There's nothing wrong with offering your clients or the public both forms of content, and letting them choose. That form of personalization can be very effective as well. And then you can A/B test to see what is consumed more and by whom. So that's another way that you can use data and analytics in your own marketing, to determine what is more effective.
Good
Right.
point.
I mean, that's how technology has also changed. It has changed the distribution side for sure, but it's also changed like how we can, as marketers and as businesses, how we can approach our, the people that are in our audience. We can give them multiple options. We can personalize it. They can choose their selection of what they want in the future, right? So that's also really important to think about too. Is that again, it's not. It used to be more of a one size fits all approach of like, here's a big report, have fun. Now it's like, let's chop things up, let's distribute it to the people the way they want it. They have their preferences, so there's a lot of ways to approach it now,
And so
which is
much
really
of it,
interesting.
yeah, can be repurposed to get more eyeballs, to get to the main event.
Yeah,
I often talk to people about the movie that's produced. You're going to spend all this money producing a movie or a report or white paper, and you want people butts in seats to look at it. So how do you do that? You make it into a very attractive movie trailer and spread it across all channels. I was looking movie trailers up from the 1980s, and these things were like 3.5 minutes. People don't have that attention span anymore. It's like 60 seconds. It leaves intrigue, and now I want to go watch this thing. So in the same way, people get this idea that if I want somebody to look at this big, long, lengthy report, I've got to pack it out into bite-sized pieces.
There are also different parts of it. So these kinds of infographics can be used, or data visualization can be used as teasers, right? To tease to the larger and longer report. But you can also pull out different parts of it so that you can appeal to different audiences. So the
yeah,
report may include three main sections, let's say, one of which might be important to one audience, a second point might be important to another audience, third to a third audience. And this way it allows you to, as Lindsay was saying, get more mileage, which is something we talk about all the time. Create it once and use it a million times.
yeah. We've worked with clients before where they say this is our primary audience and this is who we're mostly targeting. However, we have these two separate secondary sets of stakeholders that we would also love to be able to get stuff in front of as well, right? And so there's,
Yes.
you have to be thinking about that, and you get way more ROI if you're able to hit all of them with something, rather than only building it for one group.
I think also lastly, I would say that for brand awareness, it's really important. So using data like this is more modern and can help with brand awareness, having people recognize your brand as being more modern than other brands or your competitors.
Definitely. Okay, we're going to get into the fun part here, which is where, I mean, the rest of this has all been fun. However, this is where we actually get to show some of our coolest visualizations, and we'll do like a quick little chat about each of them, because what we're going to show here is, I've come up with a list of probably about 20 different ways that I think visual capitalist content stands out, like different tricks and tips and kind of like the secret sauce that we've developed over time. Here we're going to show, I think, 6 examples that I think will help show how we do that. And maybe there are ideas that other people can take and apply. But let's just go through them. So I call this create something worth exploring, which is in the modern world. Yes, there's the create something small and quick that you can look at your phone and consume quickly. However, there's also this weird opposite side of things that we've found, which is that if you create something that really hits on something that is interesting and good, and people know they can actually dive in and go and explore that in some level of depth, you can also hit that side of the market as well. But you have to do it with creating something really good and really cool. And this is something that we created with iShares. I think this is back in 2020, but this basically shows the entire ETF universe divided up into different categories like bonds and equities and commodities and alternatives and stuff like that. And obviously it's changed since then, but at the time, this was something that ETF fans and people that were in that side of the business, they would use this to explain what was happening in that universe. And so I thought this was a really cool piece of content. That's a great example of create something that's worth exploring.
I would say also that you could have an entire client meeting off of this.
So that's a really great point. Yeah, like from a usability standpoint,
right?
Yeah, you could go and you could print this out, for example, or you could link it on a Zoom call or whatever, and just be like, I mean, you could talk people that are diving deep into this area could talk about this diagram forever, right? Here's the areas of growth, and here's the areas that have been here forever, and you can see these small parts starting to emerge, and yeah, it's really, really interesting. Also, it's all done through data storytelling.
From 2020, it would be interesting to see the same.
Oh my God, yeah.
Data in 2025. I would be curious on. I'll give you that assignment, Jeff. I'd like to.
Yeah, exactly.
What it looks like now. The ETF universe doesn't probably fit on this page anymore.
Right. We can add in the new crypto block of the ETF universe, for example. Yes, absolutely. It would definitely change. Cool. So this is something that I think is underused, and it's something that we're all familiar with and we all know. So this is, showing the world's most valuable companies. And you can use color to show this in a really powerful way that tells its own individual stories. And so here it's showing the breakdown of U.S. companies versus other companies in the world, and I think that this is really powerful. Just that if you look at the 50 most valuable companies, you can see right away the impact that the U.S. has on this whole, in sort of cornering this whole market of the most valuable companies. So you could have just left this and not colored it, and you could have just had all the logos. But I think that this helps you get something more out of this information. And I think that's really important, is that you can go and pull out insights instantly from this stuff. And color is a really powerful tool to be able to do that really fast. This is what I call create an aha moment. And this is quite simply that in order to win people's attention and to have them want to share something, you have to deliver them something that's unexpected value that surprises them or teaches them something that they didn't know. And what I think is great about this is a visualization that was published in January of this year. And what's powerful about this is that I think there's 2 different layers of sort of insights that you pull from this right away. The first thing is you see that out of the 10 biggest stock declines by market capitalization, NVIDIA takes 8 out of the 10 spots, which that in itself is just a crazy fact. And you're like, wow, but that's a very surface level fact. I think there's another deeper level to it, which is, if you are familiar with the market today, you know that NVIDIA is the biggest company by market capitalization. And so how can you be the biggest company by market capitalization and a fast rising one at that after having 8 of the 10 biggest decreases in value? Well, I think it just shows that the fast growing companies, and especially ones that grow to be really big, they also go through massive setbacks. I mean, Nvidia went through we made this because on Jan 27th was the big DeepSeek event where the Chinese AI company came out with the foundational model really quickly, and it hit Nvidia really hard. And yet you could look at today, and they're already back on top. So big companies face big adversity, but they power through it as well. If you want to build something big, you have to go through this.
I think this is also a really important, so for each of these, there are many different use cases. So I'm just going to throw out another use case for this. If you're a financial advisor, you might have difficulty on down days talking to your clients and not sure what to say to them. So I feel like an infographic like this really helps people understand that not even if you have a down day, there can be plenty of up days. So I think it's also important to think about how these data points, right, can be used to illustrate many different things or make many different points.
Exactly. And there's also similar charts like this about Bitcoin as well that show Bitcoin's crashed like a million times, right? But it's still, it's still huge today, and it's near all-time highs today. But yeah, like when that event happens, if you're in wealth management and you have a client that owns this stock, they're going to be emotional, right? They're going to be
Yes.
upset, right? But then you say, hey, look, this happened 8 out of 10 times already on this list. So, and it might happen 10 out of 10 times, but that doesn't change the fact that NVIDIA is going to be very valuable in the future, right? So
Right.
I
And
agree
it
with you
applies to
100%.
other stocks. NVIDIA's information is transferable to others. So
Exactly. Have a clear takeaway. This is just something that I find is I think it's a mistake that other people use in data visualization and data storytelling more broadly, which is that they'll show you a visual, but you don't really know where to look. And I think the important thing here is that this was created as interest rates were rising post COVID, and we had it's sort of the fastest cycle, increase in a really long time. There were times where rates increased faster, but you have to go back to the sky high inflation in like the 70s for that to be the case. But in modern history, anyways, these were the fastest increasing rates, and just by the simple use of color here, and by having this as the takeaway and showing, hey, this is what you need to know from this, it makes it so that people can process this information much, much faster. Rather than if we showed this and we didn't point out and we didn't indicate what was important, then people would have to look at this for like 2 minutes to try and figure out what was actually important here, right? And people don't have the time for that right now. Like the attention spans aren't there. And so one thing that we do often, and this is just one example of it, is we try and, again, show what we want to show, and rather than trying to let them figure it out, we point it out very explicitly so that they can process the information fast. This is, I call this paint a picture by being literal. This is just, I think there's so much stuff that's abstract out there. And so if you can make something that feels like it's tangible and something that people can touch, I think it can be powerful. We don't use it for everything, but in this case, we were working with a client, a currency Forex type client, and we wanted to show the biggest daily changes in currencies with the US dollar. And we decided to actually use the currencies themselves because I think it paints a very clear picture, and these are all recognizable coins, especially if you've traveled around. And it's kind of cool to see them in this context, and it helps it stand out, and it helps it present the message. And then as a last point, this is hard to do. However, if you do it, it makes a big difference. Being memorable, doing something that is worth sharing, that sticks in your brain, right? We always aspire to be memorable, and obviously we don't achieve it on every single thing we do. But this is one example of, I think, a graphic that. So this shows all gold held by central banks in a 3D cube shown in front of the Brandenburg Gate, just as a this is a pretty old graphic that we made, but it was part of a series where we were doing all these 3D cube sizes for different gold sizes. So we would show the US median income in a little gold cube, and then we'd work all the way up to all the gold ever mined in the world and show different visualizations along the way. But this is one example that, it sticks out and you're like, it's a bit unusual. It's something that maybe you haven't thought of before. Maybe you haven't seen something like this before, but you have to think about what is going to be memorable and what people are going to, what's going to be etched in their minds. Okay, so those are our fun examples of some of the things that Visual Capitalist does to stand out. I'm going to pass this over to Lindsay now, and maybe Lindsay, you can talk about what a typical campaign looks like with us when we work with the client.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is something I'd like to show you, and then we'll get into an offer for you folks as well. So, Global X had this situation where there's a lot of data that we've got classic bar charts and line charts and so forth on the left, and being able to take that and turn it into something exciting, right? So, for example, we've got the piece in the center, which is really which companies are winning the AI race. And Global X wanted to present this because it was a very topical thing. Everybody is excited about what's happening in this space because it's picking up steam with so much momentum that why not capture that momentum? So we were able to take that, let's say, dry data and turn it into something that was really captivating. And doing that by making sure it had specific elements, simple headlines without bias or exaggeration, and making sure that it doesn't say, this is why we're so great in AI and this is why you should follow us. It's more macro, and it's really drawing attention to what is happening in the industry. It's easy to digest, it's memorable, it's shareable, and it's really thousands of data points on one graphic if we look at this one with most of the blue on it, right? And then clear calls to action. What is it that you're wanting people to do? Is this to go to your website? Is it to go to a landing page? Is it to stand out as a thought leader and really shine through the noise? And one critical thing is that trust score. How do you present data and make sure that it is cited and that it is verified? I think that sometimes that's a piece that gets missed. On the next slide, when we look at what we were able to do with this content, if we look at the three pieces on the left, these are all individual visualizations, but they get posted to our website, where then there's the blog post, as well as these little dots that you can see in the upper right of each of the visualizations. And it is actually like a little microsite within each of the posts. So people want to know more, they're going to click through. So a great way to keep the interest going, keep the awareness going, and something that's easily shareable. So that would be published across the Visual Capitalist website, as well as on the mobile version, and then across our social channels on LinkedIn as well. So great success on that. And why don't we get into this
I just want to go back to this.
Oh yeah, please.
Two really important points here, I think, for brands to consider. One is everyone is always looking to expand their footprint on social, and Visual Capitalists can give them a distribution channel and a distribution tool. So in addition to creating these great infographics, there's the second step that Visual Capitalists can do, which is, since there are so many followers and viewers and so on, it becomes a distribution channel. And then lastly, I just want to say that this is obviously branded also Global X, and that's not something that we've seen in some examples before. So you can see how this really draws your eye and creates that consistent branding for organizations as well.
Great point. Thanks for not letting me glaze over that. And, on the next slides here, Jeff, if you want to move forward on the offer, and really putting your company in the spotlight on the next slide. Companies really are coming to us because they want things visualized. But if I had to distill that down to what they're usually asking for, it's more eyeballs, more traffic, and more leads. Everybody needs leads. Everybody needs customers. It's the lifeblood of our businesses. And we do that through persuasive thought leadership, brand or product awareness, and using these visuals as a tool for demand generation. So we work with a lot of folks in the financial services space and really use the power of the data combined with storytelling to make it something that produces the result we've been talking about, to really earn attention and earn trust. And it's something that you can really apply in your own business. And on the next slide, what we've got here is an offer for folks to really consider of being able to do quarterly investor outlooks, quarterly investor reports. You could do this for your research reports or white papers and so on. But what we've got is a package where our team can digest your reports, all of the long, lengthy data that we do agree has a ton of value, but we want to get people to read it. And that's the first part. Let's get that report cracked open, and you can really leverage our expertise to help pull out those key insights and put it in something that is visually exciting, visually stimulating, and really make it something that is going to earn people's attention. So what we've got is an offer for you where you can take advantage of taking those quarterly reports and outlooks, white papers, research pieces, and turn them into 5 pieces of beautiful visualizations, blog posts, content series, and be able to then distribute that onto our website. Of course, we would put that out to socials and the other platforms as well, but leverage the audience that's hungry for the content that we're putting out there. We have a heavy readership in the financial services space in high net worth individuals. So if you're looking to connect the dots with the right people, I think that we could have a very interesting conversation. And the offer that we've got is certainly you can try us out and dip your foot in the water, and get a quarterly program going, or take advantage of something that is an annual program and get some serious savings on that. Again, leverage our expertise in data storytelling and let us do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. So that's me saying it. But April, I would be interested in your perspective. We've talked a lot about, some of the why and so forth of how people can do this, but why do you think people would even consider doing this with us?
I would say more, why not? I think that there's so much upside attached to doing something different and having your brand even appear differently. There's no reason why I think organizations, any kind of organization, whether it's a bank, a wealth management firm, an asset manager, a fintech, a wealth tech, any of the kinds of firms that I can think of, a fund, anything in investment, in financial services could benefit from this sort of marketing, which is storytelling through visuals and using a distribution channel that Visual Capitalist has already created. So I think it's a win-win.
Well, I think it's a great place to close. If we want to just flip over to the last slide here, I'll give you my contact information. If you want to take advantage of this or just have a conversation, let's talk. It's an opportunity to really take your data from out of the Stone Age that we started with in part one and the hieroglyphics and the cave art into the information in the AI age. Earn the attention that you deserve. Stop screaming from the rooftops, and really build trust. So, April, thank you very much for coming on with us and working through, let's say, any technical pleasantries that we faced today. And Jeff, thanks for being your amazing self as a leader. Would either of you like to say anything as we close?
I would just like to say that, longer is not always better. I think there is an axiom in financial services where people tend to think that if it's longer and more technical, it's better. And I think you need to move over and think about the way other brands in other industries are putting out content. And that's shorter is always better.
Yeah, I mean, I would think about how you consume media and how your kids consume media, and think about that in terms of like what you're actually creating. Are you creating something that that people are going to actually want to consume and that they're going to find, or are you just following what people did before you and what people did before that, which was effective 10 or 15 years ago, but today it just is existing in a different environment and ecosystem. So, whether you're working with visual capitalists to do data storytelling, or if you're applying these concepts in other ways, I mean, you just got to think about the best way to get content out nowadays and to tell your story. And I think that we can basically leave it at that.
Very good. I would close with the Mark Twain quote, which is, if I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter. So thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll talk with you soon.